Welcome back, Tribe. I have an episode here from Piers Morgan. He's got a bunch of people on the panel. They're debating the Shiloh, Hendrix, Karmelo Anthony crowdfunding going on. If you haven't been paying attention, a couple months back, basically, black kid stabs white kid at school. The black community raises, $500,000 for the guy to get him bail him out of jail. Then he buys a mansion, or they rent a mansion, and then buy a Cadillac Escalade, V-Wing edition, V Preference, whatever the hell those are called, over $100,000. And now awaiting trial, and we'll see how that plays out. Then a short while after that, there's another racial incident. This time that went viral was a blonde woman at a park, and she calls a little kid the N-word because she says he was being one, because he was going in her bag stealing something, some shit like that, stealing one of her kids' toys or some shit like that. Don't know exactly what that was about. But anyways, people ended up crowdfunding that too, like a racial get back for the other one, raising even more money now, $600,000 and counting, I guess. Not really keeping in touch with the dollar amounts. But anyways, so there's a conversation happening about the racial double standard, where basically you can't be a racist as a white person, and whatever that even means, and that it's okay to raise money for Karmelo because of structural injustices, and it's the conversation's gotten really wild. But it's what's dominating the culture at the moment.
Lily Gaddis, a social media commentator whose video defense of the N-word mother
has
so far been viewed millions of times on X, and the New York Post columnist and author Ricky Schlott. Well, welcome to all of you. Ricky, look, my take on this is a stain on all their houses, right? I just don't know what is happening to society when you have such vast sums of money being raised for what seems to me to be deliberate, racially charged motivational reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're fighting ugly with ugly right now. And I think this level of racial tribalism and hostility is just simply not sustainable in such a diverse democracy like America. I think it's, one is really a reaction to the other. I think both campaigns are really hideous. And I think we're showing our ugliest colors. I mean, in the scheme of things, these are small sums relative to the population of America. But you do see, I think, a really tremendous explosion of ugliness and racial hostility that I think that we should all be ashamed and embarrassed of.
Yeah, I mean, you described it, I think, in one of your posts as genuinely, is this a psyop? This would be the best $1 million invested by a foreign adversary to start a race war in America. And I knew exactly what you were getting at, because many of the comments, I think the comments have now been suspended actually on both of these funding pages, because people were quite obviously deliberately misusing them to post race baiting commentary.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go through some of the comments on either of them, you have White Lives Matter on one side, and suggestions that the teenage boy who was stabbed was somehow a manifestation of white supremacy, and it seems to be just a fight at a track meet that has nothing to do with racial hostility in the first place. And the poor father of this young man who died too said, please don't make this into a racial issue. And yet on his own Give, Send, Go campaign, there are comments after comment saying this is White Lives Matter, we're avenging against Karmelo Anthony's family. I mean, on all ends, this is ugly. I think that it's really co-opting the charity and giving community. I mean, I feel bad for the fundraising platforms, because I don't think this was the intention originally. But unfortunately, I think that people are really starting to take over good intents and the charity industrial complex to make it into a victim industrial complex. And it's really sad to see.
Well, we're going to have one of the founders of the Give, Send, Go site a little later in the program. But Mark Lamont Hill, you were shaking your head there. I mean, what's your take on this?
There are a couple of things that were said that I think are really interesting and important. One, there is an outside audience of people who are watching all of this and opportunistically using it for their own agendas and projects. I have an investment in believing X, so I'm going to jump in the comments of this GoFundMe, etc. I have an investment in Y, I'm going to do the same thing. But what I don't want to do is compare these two things as if they're opposite sides of the same coin. For me, the intention of the campaign matters. In the case of this woman who is using the N-word, the woman isn't disputing using the N-word. The woman isn't disputing being racist. And the comments that are being left on the site before they were suspended, and the attitudes behind it weren't saying she's being railroaded, she's being misrepresented. They were simply saying, we support racism. And I think that's disgusting, no matter who's doing it. On the other hand, the people who are fundraising for Karmelo Anthony, the argument here isn't, yeah, we did something and we don't care, like the other woman. The argument is, we're being misrepresented here. We're being railroaded. But this was a self-defense claim. This is not an act of violence. This isn't first-degree murder. I'm saying what they're saying. This isn't my argument. They're saying this is a first-degree murder claim that is wrong. This is actually self-defense, and we need the money to make sure that we get a fair trial. I think, so whether you agree with his argument or not, I think raising money for a fair trial is different than raising money for a racist.
I mean, I think the common theme between the two, and this is not to pass any view about it at this stage, although I have strong views about it, I guess the common theme is that both of them say that as a result of all the publicity, they've been doxxed and had all their personal details put everywhere on social media, which is, of course, the modern scourge which gets involved. And as a result, they've had death threats and they have security issues and they have to move home and so on. I understand that part of the argument. When you're at the center of a firestorm in America and you're not used to public attention, then the levels of intimidation, threats, and so on that can come your way can be extremely intimidating, if not outright dangerous. So it's different, really, to taking a view about either of the cases, to simply say that the commonality is that they both, I think, have said in defending the amounts that have been raised is, well, we have to defend ourselves. Either, as you're putting it, to the courts, but also in his case, the alleged killer, that he has also, I think, had direct threats against him. And in the case of the mother using the M-word in that despicable manner, she has said she's had a lot of threats too.
But my quick response to that would just be, let's assume everybody's telling the truth. Let's assume she's telling the truth, and let's assume he's telling the truth. If he's telling the truth and he was doing self-defense and he's getting harassed and doxxed, and of course we already know lies have been told about his GoFundMe campaign saying they were spending it on mansions and cars, all the kind of racist tropes. If that's true, he's being mistreated. And I think that's a sort of very easy case to make. When it comes to her, however, let's assume she's also telling the truth, that she used the word, she thinks the kid was acting like one. She feels like she has the right to use that word against that small baby because of whatever age-appropriate thing the kid did. If she's telling the truth and she's getting doxxed and harassed, I don't know if I want to reward her behavior with $500,000. I don't think she should be doxxed. I don't think she should be harassed. I think she has been mistreated to the extent that no one should be. You have a right to be racist. You have a right to free speech in this country. But I'm not donating money for it, and I feel a lot worse about her GoFundMe than the one for the person who's been railroaded.
Yeah. Well, Lily Gaddis, you posted a defense of Shiloh on X. It's been viewed 2.5 million times, in which it was entitled, "White People Are Finally Fighting Back."
Yeah, but the main argument here is one stabbed somebody and killed them at school where you're not allowed to have something like a knife. And then the audacity to have $500,000 or more raised for your case or whatever. It doesn't matter. In what context is it appropriate? It doesn't matter if someone's yelling at you, if someone tells you to move out of your seat or whatever. That you could pull a knife out and stab and kill somebody and be rewarded with money. At what point is that okay? That's an insane, logical leap, as opposed to this woman is saying some absolutely vile shit to a kid. If you were to weigh that morality there, kill kid for telling you to get out of your seat or whatever threat in your life or whatever it is, words, doesn't matter. And then you escalate to violence, taking his life. Versus she said something racial to a child and then took her kid and left, walked away. By the way, that whole scene was recorded by a dude that was, I don't know, allegedly tried for a case and convicted. Allegedly, I don't know. It was two guys. Don't know if he was the one that was convicted, let off, not sure. A ped, child diddler, in a park alone filming children. Don't understand that whole aspect of what was going on there, but that's an elephant in the room that nobody wants to touch, apparently. So we have a diddler in the park filming that was at the right place at the right time, or wrong place, wrong time to be a diddler doing that, and then filmed some woman saying something racial to a kid that was going through her bag, taking some stuff. Strange, right? So we're trying to have a moral equivalency to taking somebody's life and saying something mean and rude and disgusting. Depends how you want to take that. Who gives a shit? The fact is, what's more valuable, a life or your feelings hurt over words?
Stand with Shiloh Hendrix. What did you mean by that? Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up enforcement for those who missed the April deadline or still owe back taxes. Well, today's sponsor...
Here's the thing. White people have been under attack for years. It's been systematic racism. As much as black people and people of color want to talk about systematic racism in the United States, It's quite the opposite. They get preferential treatment when it comes to getting a job, when it comes to getting into colleges. White people, on the other hand, have been getting attacked relentlessly. Look at 2016 and BLM and all the riots. We just had to sit back and watch people burn down our cities and do nothing about it. So the way to fight back against essentially this anti-white hatred that's been systemically, ingrained in U.S. society is with white unity. You don't see white unity on.
But hang on. Okay, but hang on. Sorry, just to be clear, this has got nothing to do with anything you've just said. This is a disgusting, racist woman who repeatedly spews the M-word, first at a young child, and then at the person taking the video of her, does it with complete impunity, does it numerous times. We are talking about a bona fide, unquestionable racist. So I don't understand why what you've just said to me bears any relation to white unity or anything that you've just said. She's just a racist. End, isn't she? You wouldn't dispute that.
It's not about her. It's not about her. It's about.
Well, it is about her.
Together and supporting another white person, and it doesn't matter.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in the country.
No, that's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. Would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
Mm-hmm. I do quite frequently.
You use the N-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist.
What the fuck?
Are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
If you use the M-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendrix is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Karmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to be
thing.
clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Right. Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the M-word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist?
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendrix? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist, and you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch.
Isn't it weird that this is getting this kind of discussion panel, but where's the discussion panel for why America was rewarding a kid stabbing another kid with $500,000, and then the pro-black racist against white people comments on his donation, like for these crackers, kill these whiteys, all this stuff, get the white man back, that white boy deserved it, shit like that. But that doesn't get a discussion panel. This is the double standard that people are pointing out, that white people are starting to get tired of this whole, everybody could be racist against white people, but white people can't say shit back. Or white people aren't allowed to have pride in their own race or in their own history or in their own country. Here it is. This is the culmination. This is what she's trying to say. It's not really about this lady, but it's about the fact that kind of like how woke culture is dying, kind of how people are so sick of the woke messaging. It's like now it's shifted into white people are kind of sick of the whole must be guilty feeling for being white thing. That's just what's happening in the culture. As was evident by, if you managed to read before they shut down the comments, what people were writing, Piers Morgan called it race baiting. They weren't baiting anybody. That was like purely what people were feeling and were leaving behind comments of why they were donating.
And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Well, shame on white people for allowing themselves to be systematically discriminated against in the United States. This is our country. This is a country that should be...
What do you mean your country?
Because I'm white and my...
What, there are no black people in American history? Is that what you're saying? That they've all just landed in America, invading you, yes. your white country? Is that your position?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they were brought here technically.
My God,
We didn't.
do you understand how dumb you sound?
This is stupid. This is stupid and racist. And at some point, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to reward this kind of disgusting behavior by platforming it?
I don't disagree, Mark.
Listen,
I didn't know she was going to say that. I don't disagree with you.
No. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't think you knew ahead of time. I'm saying at this moment, someone who's saying technically black people brought up. No, technically Africans were stolen, enslaved, and they built.
They weren't stolen. The fact is, most of the slave traders were predominantly Jewish, white and Jewish, predominantly Jewish. And the people that got brought over to America were sold by African warlords who had successful conquest against rival tribes and would enslave the losers and sell them off for bounty, for profit, to fund more wars and more conquests. As, every tribal society is doing. Europeans did it to each other. The Roman Empire had slaves. Arabian empires had slaves. Asian empires had slaves. North American tribes were doing the same shit to the other tribes that were losing. South America, Aztecs had slaves. I mean, this was a global phenomenon. Nobody has the rights to say they founded it and they created it and they mastered it. No, I mean, Qatar still has slaves today. There's more slaves today than there was during the slave trade from North America. That's what's people don't know that. That's an insane statistic. It's a sad state of our world. And this victim mentality of we were taken from, we were stolen from, no, the victors enslaved the losers, sold them off for profit, and then kept doing it because it was profitable to fund more conquests so that more slaves could be sold so that you could make more and more money. If anything, the truth is you got sold out by your own people, or your clan lost the tribal war that they were engaged in and then got enslaved and sold. White people literally have a section of themselves, an ethnicity called Slavs, Slavics, slaves. White people were enslaved during the Ottomans and beforehand by other empires that were winning. Every race has been enslaved by other races or even their own race. It's not unique to blacks.
Built this country, and the idea that you can justify calling a baby the N-word by saying that white people are losing the country is absurd. It's morally bankrupt, and it's honestly besides the point. I mean, all these are just distractions from the fact that she wants to justify dehumanizing and even animalizing a small black child. It's disgusting.
I wouldn't even say, look, he almost went full circle on the whole. This is all a distraction. It is. It's all a distraction. Because our economy is a shit show. We have over $1 trillion in debt payments. I was talking about this in the private community. We're going to lose Social Security by 2035. Medicaid is insolvent by 2028. Do you guys understand that we're at a ticking time bomb? By the mid-30s, we have a massive fundamental economic crisis above our heads. It's looming right now. No one's sounding the alarm bells. Guys, in 10 years or less, country could be in dire straits. We have to have, by 2028, a huge conversation on Medicare and Medicaid. Yet we got to worry about stupid shit like this. 2035, there will be no more Social Security. It's insolvent. Do you understand what that means? What? No one's talking about it. Maybe the financial channels are talking about it and, those covering geopolitics and shit like that and American hegemony. But on this side of the aisle, this whole red pill / manosphere / culture commentary, everybody's scratching at the surface. Why are people so anxious today? Why are people so depressed? Why are people so they're short circuiting with a short fuse? We're broke. We're stressed the fuck out. Jobs aren't secure anymore. Companies are just cutting people willy-nilly just because it meets their bottom line profit margins. Cost of living and inflation is absolutely ruining every single upward mobility possibility of the average person. Schooling, education has gotten worse. A lot of kids are graduating. They can't fucking read. They can't do math. And we're over here talking about freedom of speech, racist shit going on, and bozos funding. Who is the Shiloh chick anyways? Let's be real. Tatted up single mom, some shit of that nature. Fine. Okay. Is that white people donating? Cause all right, we're done with the double standard. White people get to be tribal now since, everybody else gets to be tribal too. You understand we're going bankrupt as a country? That we're going to have to cut a ton of government welfare programs, which some people say, thank God, finally. But the unrest that's going to cause? Do you know what happens if you have to tell boomers Social Security is done with? And those who've put in an entire lifetime of paying taxes and Social Security will not be available for them? Americans got $400 in their bank accounts for an emergency. That's it. Like 70% of Americans have got like nothing but $400. They don't even have enough money to visit the doctor. Oh my God, bro. But pick red, pick blue. One of them is going to save you. Okay, dude. A couple years from now, we're going to have elections again. Where's the Epstein files? Where are the arrests? Why aren't people in jail for U.S. aid and funding like sex changes in Peru and shit and random stuff? How are people in Congress becoming millionaires? Like literally, Nancy Pelosi's the best trader. She beats the brightest, best, most autistic minds at Goldman Sachs. Thousands of them. They got thousands of analysts. Nancy Pelosi. A walking skeleton is a better trader. Nobody, bro. Nobody. Nobody's just like, this is how fucked up it got. There is literally a trading fund or like a trading strategy where you just follow like the top 5 people in Congress and just do the trades that they do. And you just come out winning. Straight W's. Insider trading right in your fucking face. If me or you did that, we'd go straight to jail. If they do that, they just get rich. All right, bro.
What is it?
Yeah, I never said that. I never said that.
No, but you may as well have done because you're just an unashamed
That's the implication of your
racist. Let me bring in Myron Gaines because you've been smirking and laughing. What's funny about any of this?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admitted she's a racist.
Well, let me
I'm not
finish
wagging
my
a
point.
finger at anybody.
She's
I don't need to
self-identified as a racist.
But Myron, with respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist. I use the N-word against black people. I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh, Hendrix, and Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organizing. And what I mean by this is for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result, when in reality, it's not the police killing black people, it's black people killing black people. And if you want to talk about black on white violence, black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality or, it's all so messed up. The reality is this. Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Now, look, am I saying that's awesome? Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats, and quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Right, but just to be clear, you would have no problem with one member of this panel openly saying she uses the N-word at black people with impunity and is proud of being a racist. You have no problem with that?
My worldview on the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech overrides my personal feelings. She has the right to say
That's fine. You can support the First Amendment, but you can also have a personal view about what she said.
My feelings are irrelevant. The Constitution is the Constitution. That's what matters.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hold on. So when it comes to chastising black Americans about their behavior, about calling white people crackers, as you say, about their moral claims, about the racist system, you can levy a judgment against black Americans for all the things they do. But when it comes to this woman saying the N-word and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word, now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous. And it's as the only black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your fucking problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
We're not even.
Let me ask Ricky. Ricky,
this isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak, and then I'll let you respond. Myron, I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against Black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here. Just respond to my argument.
If you're struggling with sleepless nights and exhausting days.
Now, and my argument to respond to that is this. Political correctness, liberalism, and making sure that we are politically correct and don't use certain words to offend people is precisely why we're in the situation that we're in. For decades, we've had to literally tiptoe around saying certain things around certain people, while the other group of people has been able to have impunity and be able to be as racist as they want to be, as violent as they want to be, without any type of consequence. And if you call it out, you're labeled a racist. The reality is this. Black people don't want to live around Black people. I don't want to live around a bunch of Black people. I move to neighborhoods where it's majority white because I know I'm safe. Now, this is uncomfortable reality that no one wants to say, so I'll say it for them. Black people commit a lot of crimes. A majority of the violent crime committed in the United States is committed by a small percentage of people, and they tend to be Black men. Look, the reality is the reality. People don't want to say it, but the political correctness and being nice and not wanting to tell the truth is precisely this problem. And the reason why you're seeing all the support for Metcalf and Shiloh, etc., is because white people have not been able to step up and say what they want to say for a very long time because of what I said before, systemic, organized, where they don't take accountability for their decisions.
Let me bring in Ricky to respond. Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that I agree that virtue signaling went too far, that political correctness went too far. But we're going from virtue signaling being the norm and being praised to now vice signaling being the norm and being praised. It's not just a matter of does this woman have the right to use that word? I believe that she has the right. I disagree with it. But is she now being rewarded with $500,000? Why are we rewarding people?
Okay, if it's considered a reward, isn't it a reward to stab a white person and just open up a GoFundMe and get $500,000? Do you see the logic? It just doesn't hold. If the GoFundMe represents a reward, then killing a white person should get you $500,000. Easy. So then we're going to reward white people using the N-word again. So then that's another $500,000 for you. If it's a reward, it's not. It's not a reward. The next person that does this won't have a GoFundMe, blows up like this. The next white person that uses that word and gets caught on camera will not have a GoFundMe that blows up. These are just flashpoints in the culture that, like he said, is a microcosm of what's really going on under the surface, which is the tension and the frustration of the double standards where everybody can say something against you and you can't say anything back. Like we knew this was in the mainstream. Like white men are pretty much silenced. White men can't really say much. Like white men aren't allowed to really speak on anything. First, it was like, you're a white man, you can't talk to women about whatever because the patriarchy. Then it's like, you're a white man, you don't know anything about race relations. Like, what do you know? Look at what your kind has done. So it's like white men have had to be silent. And it's funny that this like the conduit to which the white frustration has spilled out into the mainstream was through a white woman. We're one of the few that has, that kind of protected victim status still. Because if it was a white dude that did that at the park, he wouldn't have gotten the $500,000 for real. So this is all so interesting that it's blowing up in the mainstream. Wild. And then you got Kanye coming out with the song talking about Hitler, dude. That shit is crazy. What in the world? Like Pandora's box was open when Elon bought X, Twitter, whatever, and completely deregulated it and left it to be free speech for the most part. As long as you don't say shit about Elon directly or, them boys. You got to be quiet about them boys because that shit still gets regulated.
For performing vice instead of virtue. This is not healthy. This is destructive to our society. This is destructive to our social fabric, to our culture, to our ability to live with other fellow Americans. It's gross to reward someone for bad behavior. It's one thing to tolerate it, to say that she has the right to do it, but she called an autistic 5-year-old the N-word. Like, I'm sorry, but I feel like we're kind of like missing the point in the actual context. You can say that it's part of this bigger meta story of Black and white America, but it actually is just like a short little clip, and you don't even know the context of it, and it's actually gross. And if we can't just say that it's gross and bad, then I don't really know where we are.
Well, I think it's interesting to me that Lily Gaddis, you retweeted Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist, by saying he said Black people just raised $500,000 for a cold-blooded killer who stabbed a white teenager to death. So I don't want to hear one word about the Shiloh Hendrix fundraiser. Either everyone gets to be tribal or nobody does. Why would you retweet that?
because
Yeah,
I agree
I'm
with it. But we have to fight fire with fire. I mean, at some point, why
How
are
about
Jewish
nobody does?
why are Jewish people allowed to be tribal? Why are Black people allowed to be tribal? But as soon as white people stand up for themselves, we're labeled a racist. And by the way, you call people racist when you want them to stop talking about
No,
these
no, I called you a racist because you admitted you were racist. Hang on,
race.
hang on. I called, just to be clear, I called you a racist because you openly, proudly admitted you're a racist. So it wasn't a question of exposing you or pointing my finger or trying to get this out of you. You proudly sat there, bold as brass, and said, yeah, I use the N-word all the time against Black people. I'm a racist and I'm proud of it. That's what you did.
Racism is just having a preference. I prefer not to live around Black people. I prefer not to live in a country where white people in our country are disproportionately attacked by Black people. Where in my country, you can have an Austin Metcalf where he asks a guy to leave and he gets stabbed in the heart. I prefer that. That's a preference. Now, what a real racist is, in my opinion, is seeing someone as less human. I'm a Christian. I believe everyone's created in God's image. So I don't see anyone as less human. But that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to have a preference and say, I don't like what happens to be coming out of this community or that community. How is that a bad thing? How is that not just a preference?
Because you've literally made Black people sound lesser humans. You don't want to live around them. You want to use the N-word in relation to them, a word that you know causes that community unbelievable offense.
My fault? Is that my fault? If they have bad behavior, if they want to act in a certain way, if I have to cross the street and be afraid that maybe because of the crime statistics that are very real, by the way, is that my fault or is that their fault for having bad behavior?
That's mind-boggling to me for multiple reasons. I mean, we're talking about bad behavior. You know, we've never lynched you, we've never enslaved you, we've never done.
The callback to historical wrongs. There you go. So she basically said the whole statistics that you read under a lot of comment section. They'll say something like, I remember 13% of the wizards cast 70% of the spells, something like that. Obviously, we know what they're referencing. And the fact that you would go all the way back to like, oh, slavery and all this shit, because you don't have a proper argument to defend the fact that a disproportionate amount of young Black men, or just Black men in general, whatever, commit a disproportionate amount of crime, violent crime. That's like statistically true. But up until like, you know, this conversation got up here or very recently in the last month or so, you can't actually say that out loud. You couldn't. Now people are just tired of wokeness, right? This is like the pendulum swinging way back to the other side, where we got tired of like the gender debate. We got tired of the trans debate, the pronoun shit. And now it's swinging back to, you know what? I'm not going to affirm anybody's delusion. Here are the facts. The facts are a certain portion of the population is committing a disproportionate amount of crime, and I don't want to be around them, her argument. And it's not in my best interest to ignore statistics that could jeopardize my life. And this is how I feel. And dude, before, even a few years ago, it would be unheard of for this conversation, a debate like this to be had. And now people are having it openly. So, you know, if you're Hispanic and you say you want to live around other Hispanics because you feel close, because it's the culture, because it's, you know, you could relate and shit like that, you feel safer, less judged, whatever it is, it's okay. If you're Black and you want to say the same shit, it's okay. But if you're white, no, you can't. That's the entire point of this entire GoFundMe shit for this Shiloh lady, is that people are sick and tired of not being able to say statistics out loud, how they feel out loud. When you see all those videos about them white boys this and shit and all that stuff and whatever. And like white people are just like, you got to be completely quiet. You can't, because you'll lose your career, you know, your whatever it is, school, you'll get kicked out, you know, everything. There's consequences for everything. But openly can be chastised, can be talked shit about, can be called whatever name that they want to use, you know? I mean, they call, holy shit, dude. I seen even in indigenous communities, there's this one dude that was going viral a couple years back, and he didn't even refer to white people as white people. He just called them colonizers and shit. Like, it fucking made me laugh seeing that dude, but he was dead set serious, like less than human, colonizers, evil, you know, shit like that was being spewed out loud, allowed on the TikTok algorithm to spread. And, you know, when you see, especially if you go to like black side of TikTok or black side of X and all the shit and see the stuff that they say, I'm not saying it gives white people a right, but I'm just saying one side's allowed, weird, and the other side gets silenced immediately. That's why there's this flashpoint with this potentially tatted up single, mother who probably destroyed a family. Who knows? Who the fuck knows what I don't even know her story. But it's not her specifically. It's the situation. I don't know. Regardless, this is where we are in society today. We're fucked, bro. We're so fucked. We got so many bigger fish to fry. We're fucked, dude.
Any of the deep-seated structural...
Oh, and I want to make this comment. How the fuck did we go backwards so much? Coming up in the 90s, am I the only one that remembers the time where like race relations and shit like that, we had made some serious headway in America? Like, favorite basketball player growing up was Michael Jordan. I loved basketball. I watched Space Jam as a kid, and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. You had movies like Blade come out, a black vampire, cool as fuck. Some of your favorite like rappers or whatever, black. You had shows like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, cool as fuck, black. Will Smith, black family. Black culture was cool. Black people, cool. Had black friends, no problem. Nobody was talking about race. Nobody was acting weird around each other. Where the fuck, what happened? Was that the peak of like mending race relations amongst almost everybody? Like that shit, it seemed so normal when I was growing up. Like we didn't have these issues. Now this shit is literally, it was done bubbling at the surface. It's now erupting like a fucking volcano. It's crazy, man.
Forms of injustice to white people that white people have done to black people. And yet...
Even the science shows I was watching, I remember watching like Neil deGrasse Tyson was one of my favorite scientists to listen to talk about space and science in general. What is happening? That's crazy to me.
To claim some kind of moral superiority in the midst of, and again, in the context of a conversation where a white woman is calling a 5-year-old autistic child the N-word, and we're talking about black people's bad behavior. This is absurd. And the idea of fighting fire with fire, again, is a dishonest argument. Just to take us back to the point here, the people who are supporting Karmelo Anthony's campaign believe that he was wrongfully charged, and they're trying to get him legal defense. The people who are defending this woman are saying, yes, we know you called the 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word, and we want more of it. We approve of it. We support it. These are not the same thing. And it's bonkers to me that we couldn't all stand and say, hey, it is wrong to call a 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word. I mean, Myron, let me just ask you that question. I think this is a yes or no question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think the woman was wrong to do what she did to that child in that park?
I don't approve of that. But what I will say is that it's very important to understand the entire context of what led us to this position. Because again, Metcalf and Hendrix is a microcosm of a much larger problem. Earlier, we were talking about tribalism when you were mentioning Nick Fuentes' tweet. Here's the thing. Black people could be as tribal as they want to be. You have people like Tariq Nasheed, Dr. Umar Johnson running around about black power and marry black women and keep it in the hood and all this other stuff. But if white people assemble and say, you know what, white power, we need to keep our nation white, they're immediately ostracized and labeled as supremacists, and they get banned off every single platform. I find that interesting. And matter of fact, you went ahead.
Isn't that the same thing?
No, actually, it is the same thing. Because here's the problem with black people.
No, it's not.
Hold on, let me finish this. Black people practice the very racism they cry about. You guys can gather together and say Black Lives Matter, Black Power, but if white people get together and say white power, gather together, they're considered white supremacists and they get banned off every single platform. Why is that Jared Taylor and Nick Fuentes are banned off every platform for practicing white nationalism, but black people are allowed to stand every single platform getting interviews on a Breakfast Club? Explain that to me. There's a two-tier situation here where black people are able to benefit off of being racist while whites are not. And what we're dealing with right now in America is literally a backlash to this black supremacy has been able to run around unchecked for a long time, and no one has the balls to call it out. Here's the other thing I want to say. Everyone's flipping out over Shiloh Hendrix is saying the N-word.
Can I respond to the point you just made, though?
No, hold on. Nobody flipped out like this when the United States was getting destroyed in 2020 because of black protests destroying every liberal city in America. So I don't want to hear it about, she made $100,000 because she said the N-word. Who cares? They destroyed billions of dollars of structure because someone got killed who was a criminal. That's the problem in America. You guys get a privilege that no one else gets to enjoy. You could be racist.
Okay.
And
all right, I have to hang on. I'm going to hold it there. We've got another guest joining us. Mark, I'll come back to you to respond to that in a moment. But we've been joined now by Jacob Wells. He's a Christian. Let's go back to the panel there. I mean, Ricky, it seemed to me a lot of inconsistencies in Mr. Wells's position, not least the donning of the Christian hat when it suits them, but then removing it when it doesn't.
I think it's definitely tough to make the call here and there and where to censor. I err on the side of not censoring as much as possible, but I agree with you that the selectivity of having issues with abortion, but not with these campaigns is certainly a problem. But I also want to go back to our point before too and make the point that I hate this argument that because some people were tribal, we should be tribal too. And shouldn't we want to live in a society where we say tribalism is bad in general and negative in general, and so therefore we should be erring towards individualism and not fighting tribalism with more tribalism? I think that's a net negative.
I agree. Myron, your last words on this.
Okay. Because I never got to respond to Myron's other.
The thing with tribalism, it's a natural human instinct. Like, we are literally designed to want to be in communities and want to be a part of a set of community because it ensures our survival. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So the thing is that people are typically going to align with people that share similar features. And that's why we have the tribalism we have going on right now. So the problem is it's not going to go anywhere. I think the problem is that we've had this penting up for literally decades, and this has been a response to it. You have people that are coming out and supporting someone who you guys might deem as a terrible racist, but I think it's also very important to understand how we got here, because if we're going to look at the smaller problem, we can't look at the bigger problem. And it's what I said before, unchecked systemic.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, your last words on this.
This repeated use of the word, I think, first of all, I want to just register that as offensive, particularly as someone who doesn't identify as a member of that community and who is not, right? I think that's incredibly offensive.
African-American. I'm the definition of African-American.
And troublesome. And to as a Sudanese American or an outsider, who's using African-American in a very technical term, the same way that Elon Musk is an African-American, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But the bigger issue here, I think, is that, this idea of equating of one side to the other side often loses track of this issue of power. To use as example, when Black people stand up and say, hey, let's build our own stuff. Hey, let's have a Black power movement. That is not the same as a white power. I'll let you speak uninterrupted. Let me finish, please, my Sudanese brother. So when a Black person says, hey, let's preserve our culture, I have no problem with Italians or Irish people or anyone else saying, let's preserve our culture. But when we don't talk about ethnicity, but actual race, and white people say, let's preserve whiteness, it's an exclusionary practice. It's about preserving law.
What? But how does that logic track? Because you're not saying like Somali power, Ethiopian power, Nigerian power. You're just saying Black power. So if you use the same reductionist logic, then it's just forget the Italians and the Irish and the whoever else and just go white power. What?
Laws and practices and tactics that do harm to other people. A Black power movement was about opening stores and building businesses. A white power movement was a white power. That's the giga. A white power movement was about something very, 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 very different. A white power movement included lynchings, and included Ku Klux Klan, etc. So let's not pretend that these are opposite sides of the same coin. When white people say, let's save our country, and even using language of our country, when Black people built this thing, when you say that, you're talking about forcing people out of the country. You're talking about laws that discriminate. You're talking about doing harm to people. Let's not pretend these are the same thing, just like these GoFundMe campaigns are not the same thing. I'm okay if everybody gets out of the GoFundMe industrial complex. I'd love that. But let's not pretend that supporting someone for a fair trial is the same thing as supporting a grown white woman.
But again, that notion that Black people built America also doesn't hold true. Like, like when you look at demographically, there's like 40-something million Germans living in America. There's like even more than that Anglo-Saxons living in America, people from the UK, like Irish, think British, Welsh, and all this shit. Then you got millions of Scandinavians, millions of Eastern Europeans, Slavics, millions of Poles, millions of Italians that came over. You guys remember that? Especially World War I and World War II. All the cities that sprouted up in America, all that shit. Who built that? Like literally built that. American Civil War, who were the people that were dying the most? I don't know. This is also another weird thing that I've noticed. If you've noticed this too, like Black people origin stories, it's kind of becoming like a meme. Usually saying we was kangs. You see that in comments all the time. And then people will say we was, and it would be like Egyptians, the first Jews, the first Native Americans, the first Vikings. I saw that too. It was like the first everything, or that every single invention was made by Black people. What are we doing with history? I don't understand. How did public education, how have we become so radicalized, so brainwashed, so easily, so quickly from social media? This shit is wild. For example, one of the pharaohs that they were talking about, King Tut or something, I can't remember which one, they have him genetically tested. He's got Saxon blood or whatever. He's a white dude, okay? How are you simultaneously the original Native American, but also the first Jews? Or that the samurai were originally black or some shit like that. Dude, it's wild what you see. There's people on social, I don't know. I think social media and having access to a phone and a decent internet connection where you can unload all your brain vomit onto everybody else and have your message amplified to the millions of masses was a mistake. That was a mistake, dude. We should have, I don't know what, we should have fixed public education somehow. I'm not saying throw more money into that black hole because the outcomes were shit, but the only way to combat a mind virus is through a higher IQ, more knowledge, not less. This one is like a deer in headlights. This one is over it. It's like she's got N written on her head right here. This dude he's like, I don't give a shit. And Piers Morgan's got the dead look like, whatever, I'm getting views. This is easy.
Berating and calling the N-word to a 5-year-old autistic black child. And the fact that everyone in here can't be unanimous in condemning that
I totally
says
agree.
Exactly how they're not the same.
I totally agree. I'm going to go to Lily Gaddis and just ask you one more time. I mean, you've been so unashamedly proud of being a racist today, proud of using the N-word whenever you feel like it. You've had a bit of time to think about this. Is that how you want people to leave this panel debate, with thinking of you as a disgusting racist?
I don't really care what people think about me. As long as you care about what people think about you, you have no power and you lose your country. What I care about is freedom of speech. And if you're not allowed to say the most offensive things in this country, you do not have freedom of speech. I don't care what anybody says. So that's the main crux of this situation. That's what I care about with this situation. It is, we have lived for far too long in a country where you can have your life destroyed. And people say, oh, she doesn't need this money. Her life's destroyed, by the way. She'll never be able to get another job. She's got children to have to support. And I don't want to live in a country where you can say an inappropriate, rude thing, which, by the way, black people can say things to white people all the time and they never get canceled. There's no backlashing about this. I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly. And you will
well, go
not
on, then say it. Say
you
the
will not.
Go on, say the M word. Go on.
No.
Hang on.
Invite, no.
No.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term to me because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here. One Uncle Tom on the left here, and to ask her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent, Piers. I understand what you're trying to do, but we already know she's racist. And I don't want to invite a racial harm to me.
I hear you, and I accept that, and we'll leave it there. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Yeah, look, the comments, look. Piers, you didn't complain about making a killer a millionaire. Get off your high horse. Yeah, dude, what value does a life have, honestly? Piers is showing us why the UK has fallen. Piers lives in Newark, which is 97% white. Isn't that funny? Why are we comparing some lady saying a bad word to someone who killed another person? That's what I'm saying. How do you equate that morally? It blows my mind. It says calling the kid an N-word is equivalent of murdering somebody. Apparently, fatigue is real. Piers is so upset you think she stabbed the kid in the heart or something. Oh, wait. This was painful to watch. Piers wants to end wokeness, but advocates for cancel culture. He really outdid himself with this one. Yeah, this is the logical extension from the backlash of cancel culture. And if you follow it to its end, it doesn't look good, dude. The messaging's going to ramp way up from here. I guarantee it. I don't think people know just how much the Overton window has been shifting, literally in the past just few years alone. We're on the precipice of something major. It's actually impressive to watch that the elites have lost power from one autistic billionaire buying one platform and allowing almost anything to be said that has sucked the control that they used to enjoy having blank over the internet, of course, and mainstream media. Like nobody ever watches that shit anymore. And now everybody laughs at anybody even slightly perceived to be in the mainstream or mainstream adjacent. It's like, if you don't get a warning on your channel, if you don't get striked in some way, if you didn't have a government agency put you on a list, like people don't even care to hear what you have to say. If you sit on topics today, you're going to get called Pate shill. This is all a psyop. This guy's a Fed, shit like there goes another glowy, blah, 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 blah. people are really waking up to the fact that you can't trust almost anything coming from anybody today because the corruption runs so much deeper than we ever thought possible. And now that people are allowed to say whatever they want to say, for the most part, here you have the underbelly of society rising to the forefront for everybody to see. I think that's what's happening. Anyways, what's your guys' thoughts on this topic? As usual, leave a knife emoji on your way out, boys. Help the algorithm. Knives emoji. If you made it this far, drop a knives emoji. Apparently the comments, if you leave comments, it really does circumvent the, suppression they have on the channel and the video. It breaks the algorithm. So please do from here on forward. I'll mention it in the beginning of the videos. I've noticed in the ones that I've asked for you guys to leave comments, it actually does break through the suppression and videos get the views they should normally get. Wild. That has to happen. It is what it is. Anyways, guys, appreciate everything. Appreciate you guys tuning in all the time. Crazy emails you send me. Appreciate everybody in the private community. Everybody that does the consults. Thank you guys so much. As usual, boys, take care of yourselves. And see you on the next one.